Hello everybody, my name is Cosmic and welcome to the video in which I rank the difficulty of Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sins bosses. With Sekiro just around the corner, I figured I would kind of celebrate by ranking the bosses of the game that I've oddly come to love recently. Since we have 41 bosses to go through, we'll get right into it, but just before we start, please remember this video is completely my opinion and is in no way objective. And I would love to hear your opinion on the bosses in the comment section below. So let's get straight into 41. Yeah, I'm sure this one was of no surprise to anybody. This slug just kinda grovels around his arena trying to hit you. His attacks have huge wind-ups, and considering how heavy he looks, they deal pretty lackluster damage. The only attack that you really need to watch out for is one which he bites you and chews you up a little bit. It deals no damage, but it completely removes all of your armor and equipment, and you have to, well, re-equip them. When an attack like that is the most dangerous of a boss fight, then you know you got yourself an easy one. Other than this, he just slowly jumps at you and tries to roll around to squish you, flinches a little bit, and that's about it. Oh, and he also has 0 health for somebody that literally ate himself into what he is now. One of the most egregious examples of FromSoft really going quantity over quality for a few of the bosses in the game. This is probably the only boss in Dark Souls 2 that I felt was completely unnecessary. Not only is it a gank of standard enemies, but it's also incredibly easy. The only things that could possibly be scary in this fight are the 2 clerics, but even then, the projectile they fire out will hit the benches that are in abundance in the arena if you just stand behind one of them. There's not really much else to say. The congregation is just a dumb collection of standard enemies, some of them crawling on the floor with attacks that take a century and a half to pull off. And the Magus himself is a squishy, bigger target that only seems to want to slowly AoE you. All in all, Magus and Congregation is a pretty lazy fight which offers no difficulty whatsoever, and one of the few in the series that I can say I have never died to. Oh boy, the Giant Lord is pissed and he's coming at you at full force. Only very slowly. I understand this boss is possibly supposed to act as a tutorial boss, but come on, this lanky giant that lore-wise has already fought you can't do anything other than slowly slam his feet on the floor and wildly swing his arms about? I guess mechanically this boss is pretty good for a tutorial one, but it doesn't stop him from being really easy. He's about to slam his foot on you, go to his other foot. He's leaning down to swing his arm, get behind him. Simple as that really. About halfway in he tears his own arm off, but his moveset doesn't really change. Other than a couple of extra attacks that are dodged in the exact same way. Poor giant. I guess if he can't kill you, he has no use for the arm anyway. One of the most tragic characters in the series has an almost as tragic boss fight. The lore and the story of and surrounding Aldia is truly upsetting, and it makes him arguably the best lore fodder boss in the series. But sadly, that's pretty much all the credit I can give him. Unfortunately, as a melee character, I feel this fight is more of a chore than anything. He covers himself in flames, meaning you can't get close to him until he extinguishes them, and he does this pretty spontaneously. His attacks involve conjuring fireballs, either one large one or 4 smaller ones, and firing them at you, protecting himself with roots while sending a volley towards you, and stabbing his roots in the ground next to him, which will spawn lava plumes around the arena. You can punish him during most of these attacks, but the one you should really punish is his AoE after he teleports. He's always vulnerable for at least 4 seconds after doing this, so get all as much damage done as you can. Altogether as a fight, it's just a patience game. Everything he does is pretty easy to dodge and extremely slow, so just keep your greed in check, and keep an eye on the fireballs and you should have no problem with this fight whatsoever. This boss is disgusting. The more I watch the opening cutscene, the more I realize just how irredeemably disgusting it is. His hands are limbs, its head is limbs, his fingers are limbs, it's just limbs everywhere. Anyway, the hardest part of this fight is the arena. I've definitely nonchalantly rolled into the lava a few times and I found my demise because of it. Rotten's just so big, and all but 2 of his attacks require you to roll to the side of him. Not really too much else to say except to be prepared to dodge his AoE. That attack really hurts, and you're going to need a decent amount of stamina remaining to escape it unscathed. He's also got a grab attack that deals some pretty solid damage, so watch out for that one too. Otherwise though, just keep rolling to his side and punish when you have the stamina. In the speedrun and hitless runs of Dark Souls 2, the Rotten is killed 4 or more times using bonfire aesthetics to reach 1 million soul memory to gain access to Shrine of Winter. He's big to be killed 4 times because he's so easy, and if that doesn't prove it, I'm not sure what will. Vendrick's Trusted Knight, huh. I'd like to know how this guy managed to kill anything. I'm not going to insult this boss too much though. I actually think he's pretty damn good for a tutorial boss for Dark Souls 2, but this is a difficulty ranking and he's pretty damn easy. I think he's a great tutorial boss because he also rewards exploration. While going through Hyde's Tower of Flame, you can pull 2 different levers that will expand the size of the arena for you, so if you're struggling, this can help you out a little bit. Design-wise, I think he's great for tutorial boss. And how could I go past this boss without mentioning the cheese? You can make him fall off the arena just by jumping past him as he's approaching you. Just a reminder that this is one of the knights that fucking Vendrick held in high regard. You know what else Vendrick would hold in high regard? My Twitch stream over at twitch.tv/mynameiscosmic. I'd love to see you there. I stream Souls. A lot of Souls. The last giant's back, and this time he has a sword. He's not that much harder either. The run-up to this guy in the memory of Jay is awesome though, with the giant warriors battling the hollow soldiers and the turtle people with ballistas and fireballs approaching from the battlefield below. I'd argue killing the giant warriors without the use of the catapults and the rolling head is harder than Giant Lord. The easiest way to kill him is to hug the left and walk up the stairs onto the small platform. You can only use 2 attacks with a sword, both of which are really easy to dodge, and one of them can be punished for a few seconds. For some reason I didn't do it in the fight when I was getting the footage for it, but it's pretty easy to see what I mean. I will say though, I have died to Giant Lord a few times because I thought he was more similar to Last Giant than he actually is. Being behind him and at his other foot isn't exactly safe because he has bigger AoEs and a few more attacks. But if you're smarter than I am and much better at the game than I am, then simply watching his attacks as carefully as you can and dodging will mean you probably won't have anywhere near as much trouble with him. Contender for the worst boss in the game, Royal Rat Vanguard is an irritating gank that is another example of From going quantity over quality. The fight starts off with a bunch of rats that, when they hit you, start building toxic onto you. Make no mistake, these rats can poison you really quickly if you get cornered, which is the one time this fight gets really tough if you can't cure it. Just keep willing the rats down. If you come here late-ish in the game, you can probably 1 or 2 shot the rats before they can deal any damage to you and poison you. If you come here early, you can take it very slowly and kite them around the graves. The arena actually helps you out quite a bit sometimes. And this is pretty easy to do as their pathing isn't the greatest, but still watch out for them. After a while, the health bar for Vanguard will appear and a hairy boy will enter the arena. This one hairy one is the one that you have to focus, but joke's on you, the other rats that I believe infinitely spawn don't cease spawning. Just try to tunnel the hairy one and you shouldn't have too much trouble, and just be prepared to cure poison if you do get it. I don't really mind this boss as much as I should. It's incredibly lazy design and it felt completely thrown into the game for no reason whatsoever. At least the bonfire is right next to the fog gate and they have some pretty good music in Scholar.
Brave undead, you have proven yourself to me.
And at the end of it all, you face the corrupted form of the Queen of Drangleic. This fight's a strange one, and I still don't really understand it too much. She summons orbs that slowly drain your HP and build up curse, but I have no understanding on how they work, how she tells that she's gonna summon them, or how big the AoE of them is. All I know is that running away works like a charm. Unless you run RTSR, this thing should not kill you. Her other attacks involve swinging at you with a scythe, every single one of which can be completely avoided by simply rolling to her right, an AoE attack similar to the Rottens, and a couple of dark laser attacks, one of which can be pretty tricky to dodge if you're at a distance from her. Sadly, you don't see that attack in the current footage though, so I can't really show you what that is. The curse that builds up whenever you're close to one of her orbs can be quite dangerous if not dealt with and managed appropriately, so these are the two main things to watch out for. Chandra really doesn't meet the expectations for a final boss, just like Aldia, in terms of mechanics or difficulty. Establishing the real boss here is pretty tough. In the blue corner we have a buff, giant lava ram that can breathe fire and hit the player with some painful punches, and in the red corner, a tiny lava pool. Guess which one has killed me more? Yeah, Iron King's attacks don't really cause all that much trouble. Most of them involve punches on the ground that can be punished for a while. Some of them have AoE fire damage added on top. Some involve him breathing fire at you and you have to find the gap in the fireballs or run far enough away. But the goddamn swiping attacks. Unless you absolutely nail the positioning and dodge timing, you are undoubtedly gonna get pushed into this hole at least once. It's actually how I died getting the footage for this video. The credit I will give the Iron King himself is that he does hit like a truck with his arms, and he can definitely get you swiped into the lava a few times. He's also got some really cool lore, but we won't get into all of that. All in all, the battle with the old Iron King is a matter of maintaining the safest position so that you don't get helplessly swiped into lava. I can mock Royal Rat Vanguard for having lazy boss design all I want, but the Twin Dragon Riders throws that laziness straight out of the park. Remember the tutorial boss that you killed before reaching 1 million soul memory and killing all of the great ones that are undoubtedly harder bosses? Yeah, well, he's back, and this time one's got a bow. That's pretty much it. There's no real cheese for this fight though, so you have to kill them legitimately, but even then, if you know the method of using the red Dragon Rider to destroy the platform that the blue Dragon Rider is on, the boss can be pretty simple. It gets difficult, however, when both of them are coming at you. Whether they're using melee or not, having to avoid two bosses, even if it is a tutorial boss, skyrockets the difficulty. It's almost essential that you kill the blue Dragon Rider first, as he has less than half the HP the red one has, then work on killing on the red one. I have died a couple of times to them because I've gotten too greedy, and that's something you especially cannot do in a gang fight like this. The biggest tip I can give is just watch your stamina, because that is the one thing that's going to get you killed in this fight, and it's not easy maintaining stamina in a 2v1 gank like this. It's a face only a mother could love. Milfa Nito subdues this demon by singing their tunes, a power given to them by Gravelord Nito. Once the singing is ceased and the demon's disturbed, this disgusting frog tries to attack you. I don't really know how I justify why I put this guy so far down on the list, as he's vastly considered one of the easier of the bosses in the whole game. While there are still 29 bosses harder than him, I feel like many would disagree that there's 11 easier than him. Truth be told, I just really suck at this fight. The best strategy is to stick as close as you can to his face so that attacks are narrowed down to only 1 or 2 possibilities. Keeping a distance from him means that he can spit water at you, flop at you, or very quickly approach you. And these attacks can be pretty damn scary, are very hard to dodge and can hit very hard. These attacks scare me so much, it's honestly the reason why I put him at number 30. Especially on early playthroughs, it can be really intimidating to get close to his face, and so many players are faced with the scary attacks rather than the simple ones. The gimmick to the fight as well is that you cannot hit his exterior skin, only his pretty little face. So as somebody that really sucks at the fight, take my advice and stick yourself to his face as much as you can. I know it's ugly, but it makes the fight much easier. The difficulty of the Skeleton Lords depends a lot on the weapon being used against them, so this one was pretty difficult to rank. I've played through Dark Souls 2 so many times with so many different weapons, and the Skeleton Lords can be trivialized by one simple prerequisite. Does the weapon you are using attack in a large AoE in front or behind you? Then you're going to find this fight incredibly easy. Does your weapon, for example a rapier, only have a tiny horizontal AoE? Then you might have a tougher time. The playthrough I used to get the footage for this video, I used the red iron twin blades on NG+2, so the boss is pretty trivial. But on NG Plus with the Espada Ropera, I actually died a few times just being ganked in the corner. I'll get the really bad aspects of the fight covered. It's yet again another gank made out of standard enemies that you've encountered already, with the exception of 3 awesome looking skeleton mages. After you've killed the mages, or got one to low HP, I'm not entirely sure, they summon loads of smaller skeletons, some of which wielding twin blades and have armor. Some of them are standard little dumb ones, and a couple of bone wheels added in for good measure. Cause, you know, gotta have some variety when choosing from standard enemies that you've already put in the game, right? I'm not going to talk about this boss for very long, otherwise I'm just going to get angry. This boss is irredeemably abysmal. The outcome of the fight is determined before it even starts. There are 4 little dog rats on the ground near where the big rat sleeps. These will toxic you in 1 or 2 hits unless you have crazy high defense, and are incredibly quick with their attacks. It's more difficult than it sounds to kill all 4 of the rat dogs, since the big boy wakes up as soon as you get close or engage in combat with any of them. If you get toxic, the fight is over unless you become a god among men and no-hit the fight until it's gone. Even then, you've wasted a lot of life gems Orestes. Once the 4 rats are down, the big one is a pretty straightforward fight. Its attacks involve charging at you from a distance, swiping at you with its feet, and also spurting out toxic goop. I don't know, I'm done with this boss. It's terribly designed, and I'm so thankful it's optional, because let me tell you, avoiding toxic from the little ones is so much harder than it sounds and looks on paper. This was another boss that was quite tough to rank, although I was a little bit more sure with this one. The arena for Mytha is either completely covered in poison, or only slightly covered in poison. The game does a terrible job of telling you, if it even tells you at all, that you have to light the windmill to drain the area of the poison. Once you've done this, the boss can either be really nasty or pretty damn easy. It all depends on the attacks you get. In my opinion, remember, Mytha's melee attacks can be hard to dodge due to how quick they are and how deceivingly long her combos can be. Her magic attacks are much friendlier though. In particular, there's one attack where she awkwardly throws her head onto the ground, has it explode, and then panics and goes to collect it. This is the best attack in her arsenal to punish, as it literally takes her 5 seconds to go and get it back. I don't know, maybe it's just because I haven't really learned the fight very much, but the melee attacks can just make the fight so much harder. I think I struggle with her personally because I'm awful at dodging them, and I actually slogged through the poison on my first run through. Don't do that. It's a bad idea. Drain the poison. Seriously. I don't know what I think of this boss. I like the concept and I think it's pretty cool, but I don't think it should actually be a boss fight. You don't fight the Executioner's chariot. You fight a bunch of standard skeletons, a couple of pyromancers, a few spikes, and at the end of it all, a 2-headed horse. I wouldn't discredit any of this fight though, personally. The chariot itself, if it hits you, will hit like a bus. It's hard to roll through if you don't have a crevice to hide in, and throughout all of this, you have to avoid a bunch of infinitely respawning skeletons. They only stop respawning after the 2 pyromancers are killed. And once you get to the end of the hippodrome, you can lower the gate, thus killing the Executioner and his chariot. Any of the horse's attacks from its behind, such as its book, have very little tells and hit extremely hard. Some of the hitboxes of its front attacks can be a little janky too, regardless of what your adaptability or agility is, and hit just as hard. Maybe I'm just bad at fighting him again, but I find him quite unpredictable and I can find myself dying pretty quickly sometimes, especially if I'm not paying full attention to where I'm positioned. I said before, I like the concept of this boss, but I don't think it suits an actual boss fight, and it would probably be too tedious if they just made it a standard area. The same can be said about this fight that could be said about Mytha. Depending on the attacks it uses, the fight can be pretty easy or infuriatingly difficult. Throughout the whole fight, FREJA summons smaller spiders, and they can really gang up on you if you aren't always on the move. Taking them out isn't really an option either, as FREJA will be trying to zap you with dark lasers, which hit very hard, or trying to get closer to you so it can go all one reborn on you and mindlessly stomp its leg around. Did I just say leg? I meant legs. I'm keeping that in. The attacks that involve its legs can be really annoying and mean that you can't get close to either of its faces. If you're lucky, Freya will spam the dark laser attacks and you can just play switcheroo with the two heads and deal some pretty consistent damage depending on how well you manage your stamina. There's also the problem of it guarding its face, then spitting goo at you, which can be really annoying if you've been punishing it for a while and have no stamina. Can really whittle your health down a lot as well. Just try your best to punish the lasers and take out some of the ads when it's stomping its legs around. Do yourself a favor and stick to the mace side. This boss is pretty unique in the fact that it has two completely different movesets depending on which side you are closest to and which is attacking you. The sword side has attacks that are faster and harder to dodge and has faster recovery times but don't hit as hard. And the mace side has slower attacks, slower recovery times, but he hits very hard. The trade-off is worth it though, trust me. The mace side really struggles to put up much of a fight against you, and one dodge backwards should keep you covered for the entire combo, then you can punish him. Another thing that's really unique and cool about this fight that also makes it much harder is that the water is slowly rising during the fight, forcing you to go in occasionally and actually get some damage dealt to him, since if the water rises enough, it's going to make you move and roll slower, making the fight indescribably more difficult. On New Game Plus, the Sentry gets help from two of the assassins, and god damn, it makes the fight so much more challenging. So just stick to the mace side and get as much damage as you possibly can dealt to him, because trust me, you don't want that water being any higher than it is at the first 2 minutes. This fight's another strange one, and again depends entirely on what attack she uses. Her Telsons are the hardest hitting attacks. She can swing this either direction, although with a slow wind-up, and affect a massive area with a devastating attack. She can slam it backwards multiple times, and although this is arguably her easiest attack to dodge, it still hits like a double-decker bus. If she's not in a position to use the Telson, she will instead use some magic attacks, the most dangerous and irritating one being the homing Soul Mass. The orbs from the Soul Mass she uses cannot be predicted and will travel at you at random intervals, just like Aldia's Fireballs and Soul of Cinder's Soul Mass in Dark Souls 3. The best way to manage this fight is to stand on one of her back legs. This baits an attack from her Telsons, allowing you to either punish or reposition yourself for further attacks. Although I enjoy fights that switch up the style like Soul of Cinder, Najka might be the worst of the lot. But I still think it's a nice throwback to Chaos Witch Quelaag from Dark Souls. Let's get the few ugly stuff out of the way first. I hate it when FromSoft reproduces bosses throughout the game and puts them in as regular ads. They did it with Covetous Demon, the Ruin Sentinel, Shadows of Yharnam, Dragonslayer Armor. They did it a lot. This time, it's reversed. You've already had the opportunity to fight the Pursuer multiple times before fighting him here in his arena. I don't like this personally, but it might be a petty complaint for what's actually a thrilling fight. I don't think Dark Souls 2 has the best hitboxes for a few bosses, but Pursuer seems to be one of the exceptions. I'd never once felt like I've died due to my lack of adaptability or iframes, but just due to my own mistakes. Managing your stamina in this fight will be the hardest part. Pursuer has many long combos that send him flying into the air, slamming his sword into the ground in different orientations, meaning you have to switch up how you dodge all of his attacks. With the low stamina that you likely have facing him at this point in the game, this can be pretty hard to manage if you also want to get some damage done on him. But as I said, his hitboxes never seem to cause me any problems, and the fight truly feels like a duel between two warriors. Man, I'd even go as far to say that it gives me Artorias vibes. He's likely the first boss that you will meet that will seriously test your stamina management skills and will demand that you are watching it at all times, managing your attack windows and dodge timings perfectly. If you've played Dark Souls, then you know how this boss goes. This boss is unseen in Smo without Smo. As somebody that's played too much Dark Souls, I'm used to dodging an enemy with this guy's moveset, all while dodging Smo simultaneously. This is another boss that I quite enjoy. Although it's pretty much a copy-paste from Dark Souls, it's exhilarating to play against a warrior wielding a spear with such a good moveset. As a new player, it's a time when you'll seriously and truly benefit from repeatedly looking at the boss's moveset in order to play around it. Playing at a distance from the old Dragon Slayer is not wise, as he'll be sliding around the room Ornstein style to try and swipe at you quickly, which can be hard to dodge if you aren't the best at managing the camera. Playing close to him isn't such a good idea sometimes either, as he can use many different combos, some of which can stun you and deal some serious damage, or he can throw himself on the ground again to try and deal dark AoE damage to you. Altogether, what makes the old Dragon Slayer such a challenge is his speed. He can close the distance on you no problem, leaving you very small windows to heal and recover from his previous hits. He can be relentless in some fights, and it can seriously be a tough one. This one might be a little controversial. Vendrick could be considered perhaps one of the easiest bosses in the game, and I would agree to an extent. You see, Vendrick has varying defenses statistically depending on how many Soul of Giants you have in your inventory. Without any Giant Souls, he has 32 times his normal defenses, with this number being halved on every soul collected. So 1 soul means he has 16 times his defenses, and all 5 means he has normal defense. This is the way to make this fight really easy or really difficult. But even after all of this, you have to fight a boss that hits almost as hard as the Ancient Dragon. Every hit Vendrick sends your way hits so hard, it's insane. Thankfully, his attacks seem to take a century and a half to do and are pretty predictable, but honestly, the damage he does is enough to put him at the number 20 spot in my opinion. Especially if you don't have all 4 of the Giant Souls, and one of which can only be acquired by killing a top 10 boss on this list. Spoiler alert. Not much more to say about Vendrick, just keep that weapon buffed and keep wailing on him, but for the love of God, keep enough stamina to dodge at least 2 attacks, otherwise you're a dead piece of flesh. Just saying. I love fights versus dragons in Soulsborne. It's why Darky Amidir and Black Dragon Calamite are some of my favorite bosses in the series. However, 2 of the 3 dragon fights in Dark Souls 2 really don't do them justice, and sadly, Guardian Dragon is one of them. This fight is pretty simple on paper, but for players that aren't very experienced with fights like this, he can offer a challenge. Although his melee attacks aren't necessarily difficult to dodge, they hit hard and actually have a deceivingly large AoE. What makes this fight really tough are the fire attacks. He can fly into the air and either breathe fire from underneath him where he is in a deceivingly ginormous AoE, or he'll land on the side of the arena and cover 2/3 of that side with fire. If you're not the best at managing the camera, these attacks can be menacing because you have to be running away before the attack starts to have any sort of chance of getting away unscathed. And unless you're a mage or a ranged character, you can't do anything to the dragon while he's doing these attacks, so you're just left to awkwardly stand there watching it while your buffs slowly tick down. I don't really enjoy this fight because his attacks do a hell of a lot of damage and is almost impossible to iframe through if you get hit by one of them, but Guardian Dragon might just take the cake for having my favorite boss arena in the game, and possibly one of my favorites in the whole series. Undoubtedly one of the best bosses in Dark Souls 2, the Looking Glass Knight is an incredible fight with an absolutely gorgeous arena. Amidst a storm of Drangleic, you must face off against one of Vendrick's lieutenants, existing to test the skill and prowess of anybody who wished to serve Drangleic and join the kingdom's royal knights. The knight's attacks can vary a lot. A lot of his combos involve a lot of standard swings with his sword, most of which are pretty straightforward. However, amongst all of these combos, you have to hit his body, because his shield will block any and all attacks that come its way. The knight will also summon the power of the storm and release one of 3 different attacks, the most common being one where he swings with a big AoE in front of him. This is the simplest of the lightning attacks to dodge, but once again, dodging isn't the only thing to worry about, as you have to hit his body. If you hit his shield, your character will stagger slightly and, well, that eats up your stamina. His shield is pretty damn big too. His other 2 storm attacks involve a similar swing that will send 5 orbs in front of him in a large radius, and the other is a vertical swing that sends a dangerous beam of lightning in front of where his sword lands. There's one more major thing to watch out for though, which is when he puts his shield in the ground. If he just puts his shield in the ground and keeps holding his sword, one of 2 different NPCs will come out of his shield and join him in the fight. If he puts his sword in the ground as well as his shield, he's summoning a player. Having either of these spawn will skyrocket the difficulty of the fight, so my suggestion is to keep your distance from him to bait the jumping attacks that are simplest to dodge and punish. And if he does summon an NPC or player, tunnel them hard and get back to the knight, because trust me, you don't want either of these in the fight for too long. I've spoken about this boss for way too long now, but I can't give it enough appraisal. Absolutely one of the best bosses in the game, and one that I will always praise. This is a boss that I've come to praise the more that I play the game. This boss relies a lot on high adaptability and agility. The hitbox on the Royal Aegis' hammer can be quite unforgiving sometimes, and on Soul Level 1 runs he can be the hardest boss on any percent. But after all this time, I've really come to enjoy the fight with Velstadt. It's quite generic, and there's not really an incredible amount special about him. He's just another dodge a big hammer and punish boss. But as I mentioned before, the adaptability of your character will almost single-handedly determine the difficulty of the fight. I've killed him with Soul Level 1 adaptability on my first playthrough, and I probably died to him way more than I died to most other bosses. What can be difficult about this fight, regardless of adaptability, is just how damn hard he hits and the area that he covers with his hammer. After he reaches about 40% HP, he will buff himself and gain a crazy boost in defense and a small boost in attack, which will make this fight much harder and, by extension, much longer. Anyway, this fight is still intimidating to me, and I don't think it ever won't be. Hooray, another gank fight. This one can be pretty damn tough as well. You're essentially fighting 3 of the exact same enemy. They have melee attacks that seem to reach across some continents, some of them being really hard to dodge, meaning they can also cover distance on you really quickly, so killing one at a time individually is made extremely tough if you ever fall off the first platform. But my suggestion is to kill Yahim on the first platform without dropping, since Alessia and Reese don't actually function until you either drop onto the floor or if you kill Yahim. You can then drop and kill the other 2 instead of fighting all 3 at once. Even then, finding windows to attack any of them can be real difficult, as their halberds can nick at you from a long way. Thankfully, they're quite squishy, but this is pretty voided by the difficulty of actually finding any windows to attack them. The footage doesn't really do it justice. The same applies to healing. If you get hit by any of them and need to heal, trying to balance this with 2 different enemies like this can be very, very hard, and I can find myself dying quite often to thinking it's safe when it actually isn't. And don't even get me started on when you actually get them separated and you finally see a window to attack them and they just start turtling behind their shields. Oh, and they can also be parried, so there you go. If you're a parry god, then I guess you won't find this as tough. I like this boss a lot. The Lost Sinner is a boss that does not allow you to attack her any more than once or maybe twice at a time. She's one of the fastest bosses in Dark Souls 2 with combos that close the distance on you almost instantly. Some of her attacks mean she jumps into the air and slams down onto you, some involve jumping over you completely and attacking you from behind, and all of these can be pretty tricky to dodge. Not to mention her recovery times and the distance in which she jumps away from you. As soon as all of her combos end, you have the time to either heal or hit her once or twice, depending on the weapon used. All of this combined makes up for a very difficult fight. There's also the case of lighting up the arena. Before you enter the battle, you have the option of lighting the left and right sides of the arena with a torch. On New Game Plus, the Sinner has 2 phantoms join her halfway into the battle, which would put her much lower on the list because god damn, that makes the fight so much harder. I don't think I need to say too much more. Her attacks and recovery times make a really hard challenge and makes her a boss that I'm always scared of fighting, especially on New Game Plus. On the other end of the spectrum, we have one of my personal least favorite bosses in the game. Ilana is a boss that revolves almost entirely around magic spells. She has a plethora of spells in her arsenal, such as Flame Swath, an exploding fireball that she sends over a medium distance, Chaos Storm, similar to Aldia's Lava Plume attack, and Dark Storm, arguably her most scarcely used, where she explodes in an AoE and has dark orbs orbiting her, as well as a few more. It's actually relatively easy to deal some pretty substantial damage to her at the beginning, since she has a long animation where she picks up her staff, but it's when she's so summons adds that this will become so much more difficult. She can summon one of 3 things. She can summon either 3 standard skeletons or 3 enslaved pigs. I've never seen this, but according to the wiki, she does. And they don't sound like they'd add much more difficulty to the fight, but it turns into a gank that can mean finding a window to attack Alana, who can teleport, by the way, can be very, very hard. She can, however, summon something else that's even harder than the skeletons and the pigs. She can summon Velstad. Yep, she can literally summon a whole other boss to join the fight with her, and goddamn, you can argue it's not even worth fighting her if she summons them because it becomes insanely difficult to manage the 2 of them at a time. I typically ignore whatever she summons and try to just wail on her because she doesn't have the most HP in the game, but this gets me killed quite a lot, and I always find myself not excited for the Alana fight because of the RNG involved. The renowned gank squad of Dark Souls 2 offers no creativity whatsoever and is also a contender for the worst boss in the game. The Afflicted Grave Robber is basically a female Alva, Seeker of the Spurned, and Ancient Soldier Varg is basically Havel the Rock, both of which literally just follow you and try to hit you with their weapons. How amazing. Serra the Old Explorer, however, is a mixture of a ranged and melee fighter. He will fire a great bow and great arrows at you for as long as he has line of sight, and will whip out the S-Stock if you get close to him, which is really dangerous and is arguably harder than the other 2. The arena for this fight allows you to use strategy of taking out Serra first. Since he's on his own, it leaves him pretty vulnerable to any sort of attacks providing he doesn't whip out the S-Stock. He's also really annoyingly good at rolling through attacks, especially magic ones. Once Serra is dead, you now have to get through both the Grave Robber and Varg. This can be hard to do because they'll generally be really close to each other, and going in for attacks means that you might get hit by one of them. The Grave Robber with the Berserker Blades moveset is the one that you must try and focus first, as she has less HP, staggers easier, and also inflicts bleed damage on you. Once she's down, the fight's fairly simple because the fight with Varg is very slow with his Dragon Tooth. If you try to focus down Varg first, he's just going to heal himself with his 7 Estus flasks that he has access to. Unless you have the DPS to absolutely wail on him, it's just not worth it. Not much else to say. This gank squad is yet another lazy gank that From decided to throw into the game and doesn't do the DLCs for Dark Souls 2 much justice at all. Thank God they're optional. And don't even get me started the run through Cave of the Dead to get to them. I can think of maybe one area that's worse than this. It's just infuriating to run through, and it's not worth running through to get to such a terrible boss. But I do it on every playthrough anyway, because I hate myself. Hey guys, look! It's a reskin of a reskin with the same music. Are you excited yet? Once again, it's an optional, incredibly lazy gank fight that I see no reason to fight unless you're going for all bosses every run. To start things off, you can't lock onto the gargoyles until their initial animation is completely over, which in and of itself is irritating and makes the fight a little bit more difficult depending on your weapon. What makes this fight twice as difficult than the bell gargoyles in Dark Souls is just how many of them spawn. In Dark Souls, there's 2 of them. Dark Souls 2, there's 5 of them. And if you don't have the DPS to kill them all, you're going to be stuck between a rock and 4 other rocks. Similarly to the Ruined Sentinels, one thing that adds so much difficulty to this fight is that their attacks seem to be cross-continental with their halberds, and combining this with fire attacks that have a crazy AoE and attacks that involve jumping over you and stabbing at you from behind just makes for an infuriating stun-lock gank that offers next to no creativity at all and just fills a spot in the 41 bosses plethora. The best way to deal with this fight is to really tunnel one of them and narrow the fight down to as little gargoyles as possible. This is made easier by the fact that they don't all spawn instantly, but it's definitely the best strategy for them. I find myself dying a lot because I often use stupid, dumb weapons that don't allow me to do the fight this way, so I always struggle with them every playthrough. good dragon fight! Sin is just awesome, and there's only one flaw I really have with the entire fight. Similarly to Guardian Dragon, Sin can fly in the air and be completely and utterly out of reach from melee characters, and this can extend the duration of the fight by so much that it can make it pretty boring and infuriating. His melee combat is where this battle really shines. He has attacks that cover his entire body, meaning there's no safe spot to be in against his attacks, and you have to constantly be watching and waiting for him to try and attack you next. Only this isn't quite as easy as it may sound, because some of the claw swipes he has are very poorly telegraphed. He can close the distance on you very quickly with a charging attack that he always starts the fight with that is hard to dodge if you don't make the distance on him previously. His fire attacks build toxic onto you and will leave a toxic fog near where the attack hit for a long while. As with most dragons, he can do this attack in a sweeping motion or just a straight flamethrower in the player's direction. He has one attack in particular where he will hit you with multiple swipes and then whirl around a little bit. This can be calamitous and will really be difficult to dodge if you haven't cut off his tail. Once again, combining all of the elements I mentioned makes a very difficult boss fight, and a pretty damn amazing one at that. Just entering the top 10, we have the wannabe Ornstein and Smough of Dark Souls 2. The concept is the same, really. The Throne Watcher is a faster, more agile enemy with quick attacks, faster recovery times that hits less hard, and the Throne Defender is a slower, bulkier version of Watcher that hits harder. I actually really like 2v1 ganks that are like this. Although it's a worse version of Ornstein and Smough, the Watcher and Defender complement each other really well with the different movesets. There's actually a hell of a lot of different things that can happen during this fight. Firstly, you should focus the Throne Watcher due to the aggression he has. I say this because you really want to fight them separated, as with most ganks, and unlike the Defender, he can close the distance on you really quickly, so trying to get any damage dealt to the Defender while he's up just isn't worth it. Once the Watcher is on low health, he'll buff his weapon, thus gaining a substantial boost in attack. This, needless to say, makes the fight much more difficult, as any hit you take from him is much worse than it was before. Once you kill the Watcher, he'll kneel on the floor for a while until the Defender inevitably goes to revive him. This doesn't happen instantly, and you'll have a decent chunk of time to kill the Defender, who can now lose his shield and buff his weapon. Not that the Defender's that tough of a target, he's slow, with some really easy to dodge attacks, but he also hits really hard. How many times have I given bosses that kind of credit? Vendrick, you just gotta try your best and keep an eye on the buffs, tunnel the Watcher at the beginning of the fight, and do your best to keep some distance from the Defender until he's dead. Despite being number 9, I'm gonna get this boss out of the way even quicker than I did Authority. This boss is stupid. His attacks involve stomping at you with his feet, breathing fire underneath his belly, throwing a straight flamethrower in your direction, and flying up in the air to breathe fire in a massive AoE that is extremely difficult to avoid. The only trick to this attack is to find his tail and run towards it. The AoE that this fire attack has is absolutely insane and will almost definitely 1- or 2-shot you depending on which point you fight him and how high your fire defense is. The stomps aren't much of a problem, you just have to make sure, and this is a fundamental thing about this boss fight, that you never run out of stamina. That's it though, the sheer damage and size of the AoE this attack has is insane and makes for a fight that honestly feels more, well, unfair than it does a fair fight in most cases. Hooray, another awesome boss! As with one of the other bosses in the DLC, the Burnt Ivory King heavily rewards exploration. The way this fight works is that you can travel around Aleum Lois to rescue 4 Lois Knights. These Knights, upon being rescued, will assist you in the opening gank of the fight. Other Lois warriors will emerge from the portals on either side of the arena, and all of these must be killed in order for the Burnt Ivory King to spawn. Lois Knights are also so important because if you collect more of them, no of the warriors will spawn during the Ivy King's appearance, something that would otherwise happen, making this fight indescribably harder. Once the Ivory King spawns though, it's an exhilarating duel between you and him. His moveset is actually pretty standard, but much like the Looking Glass Knight and the Lost Sinner, that's not a bad thing. All of his moves demand that you really analyze the boss to see what he's doing next, especially when he buffs for phase 2. He deals massive damage with some very quick attacks that can be incredibly troublesome. He's agile and can move around the arena really quickly while also being able to close the distance on you very quickly with no recovery time. Not to mention that upon entering phase 2, his sword turns into a spear and has insane reach. This fight's definitely a demanding one, and in order for you to kill the Burnt Ivory King, you're gonna need to be at the top of your game. Speaking of bosses that reward you for exploration, Ava is the other one. At the beginning of the DLC, you can enter this boss arena instantly and trigger the whole fight. Only a silhouette of Ava will appear, and without exploring the remainder of Aleum Lois and collecting the Eye of the Priestess, you cannot see this king's pet. Needless to say, you don't fight the boss this way. You can if you want, but why would you unless you're speedrunning? Even with the Eye of the Priestess, this kitty is no easy feat. This is another fight that uses two different combat styles, magic and melee. Not one of these styles is easier than the other, and both hit you really hard and are probably gonna knock you down on the floor if you ever get hit by any of them. She can charge at you while swiping at you with her paw, which is pretty simple to dodge but risky to punish. She has a follow-up attack where she turns around and swipes at you with her paw again, but unlike most other four-legged larger bosses, staying underneath her is not safe because of this follow-up. A few of her attacks also mean she runs away from you and starts throwing magic in your direction, or one in which she jumps backwards and jumps at you with her mouth open. This is a grab attack and means you will suffer crazy damage if hit by it. She has other damage attacks, like one where she slams her paw into the ground and summons icicle eruptions around her, which is awkward as a melee character for the same reason as it is Aldia and Sin. Honestly, the hardest part of Ava is having to avoid her follow-ups, as they can be lethal. I still always get hit by them and find myself dying very often. Her magic attacks can be avoided in two ways. If you're close enough to her, you can go behind her and the soul mass particles can't actually reach you at all, or if you're far enough away from her, simply sprinting left or right after her mouth closes. So the magic may not be particularly dangerous, but her terrifying melee combos and follow-ups can mean the brutal demise for a lot of players, myself included. Another personal favorite of mine, the Smelter Demon, is probably renowned for being one of the hardest bosses in the game and one that many people either skipped or stopped playing once they've reached, and I understand why. The Smelter Demon hits incredibly hard with its attacks, has a crazy high amount of HP, and no weaknesses. Therefore, you're forced to nail your dodges for the fight, which isn't easy at all as he has access to many really difficult to dodge moves that have a lot of tracking, including overhead slams, horizontal swipes to his left and right, jumping lunges, and AoE attacks just to add to the mix. Throughout all of this, the Smelter Demon buffs twice throughout the fight, adding an indefinite AoE around him that slowly drains your HP if you get close to him. This means that amongst all of these tough to dodge attacks, you have to constantly be watching your health so that it doesn't reach the position where you get one shot. My suggestion is to use a couple of life gems while he's buffing due to his massive defense boost during the animations. This will void the AoE damage temporarily so you can get some hits in. The buffs also do a couple of other things. They add AoE to some of his attacks that didn't have it in phase 1, like the overhead slams, which adds even further layers of difficulty to the fight. And don't even get me started on the run to the Iron Keep. There are so many of the Alon Knights, it makes every attempt a slog and be quite annoying if all you want to do is fight the boss. Despite all the credit I've given to bosses like Pursuer, Lost Sinner, and Burnt Ivory King, the best fight in Dark Souls 2 that really does feel like a duel between warriors is Sir Alon. I really enjoy fights where the boss also has as much movement ability as you do, and many of his attacks means that he can jump backwards once or twice and charges at you with a gliding slash that will either be pretty instant or delayed. Determining whether this attack will be delayed or not is really difficult, and you will be punished severely for assuming one or the other. This attack hits hard, and due to the fact that he can hit you with an uppercut, you'll probably be knocked into the air and onto the floor. He also has some attacks in his arsenal that he can do from a distance, like Dark Sword, where he summons several horizontal waves of magic with his sword that can be very tough to dodge. He can also impale the player with his sword, which will buff it for a while. Due to how much he jumps around, it can sometimes be pretty difficult determining which move he's about to use and where you'll need to dodge, and this is often how I die. Sir Alon's a great boss fight that never feels unfair at any other points other than when he's buffed, and even then, he's normally buffed because you made a mistake. And it just feels like a constant adrenaline rush fighting against a skilled warrior that also shares a similar agility to the player. Another really awesome boss, Darklurker, lies at the end of the dark chasm of old after clearing all memories for Dark Diver Grandal. Every attack this boss has is magic, including its melee ones. Its other attacks involve summoning portals and orbs. One can be fire and is much larger, the other is a darker one that's much smaller. The firing is one in which he sends 3 fireballs at you. They're pretty easy to dodge but forces you to separate yourself from the boss himself. He spawns 2 of the smaller, darker ones, one next to him and another where you are currently. He then sends a small blob through his side and it comes out the other side and explodes upon contact with either the ground or the player. The off-screen attacks like this that come from Darklurker can be considered unfair, but I would disagree with that. If you know what's coming and can position yourself in such a way that allows you to see both orbs, then you shouldn't have a problem. The fight starts off with just one of them, but around halfway into the fight he splits into 2, and this is where the fight gets serious. Their moveset doesn't change, but it doesn't need to. The fight's top 10 worthy in and of itself, but without 2 of them in the arena, and this game absolutely forces you to use the camera appropriately and not lock onto the bosses as much during this fight. They can teleport everywhere, send 2 different AoEs at you at once, start slashing at you with 2 different blades, and it's just insane. There are too many explosions and way too many things to keep an eye on sometimes. Altogether, the fight with Darklurker is a very difficult one, and it's a gank that involves both magic and melee that demands perfect use of the camera and analysis of attack and healing windows. You thought it was finished. You thought once you killed the Smelter Demon that the challenge was over. Yeah, you're wrong. Although it's essentially a copy-paste of the original Smelter Demon, the aged one has a few other additions that makes it much harder. Needless to say, the aged model has much more health and damage scaled for endgame DLC, understandably so. I've already explained what Smelter's attacks are like with the previous listing, so I won't go through them again, but the aged one for starters does an AoE upon buffing for phase 2, which always catches a lot of people out, myself included, before I actually got good at the boss. If you spend the time of painstakingly learning the Smelter Demon fight, then a lot of your efforts will be void in this fight, as the aged model has varying cooldowns on the attacks it uses. It's tough to recognize whether he's going to delay the follow-up or do it at the same speed as the original model, which means you might get caught up in possibly one of the hardest hitting attacks in the whole game. Varying cooldowns on attacks means so much more of a difference to the difficulty in the fight than you might imagine, and the aged Smelter Demon, with how hard it is, really is an incredibly difficult opponent that is, unfortunately, almost a direct copy-paste of an amazing boss earlier in the game. This one is also optional like the original Smelter Demon, but also in the same vein, the run up to him through Iron Passage is just pure garbage and might be the worst run up to any boss in the series. My personal favorite boss in the entire game is also, in my opinion, the second hardest. It's actually said that statistically the Fume Knight is the hardest boss in the game, with 93% of people dying to him, and I completely understand why. You'll notice one fundamental thing about the fight. Raim has a standard longsword and his renowned Fume Ultra Greatsword, and it hits about as hard as you would imagine. His first phase is a mixture of him combining faster combos with the longsword, then finishing with a swing at the Greatsword. These combos are pretty long and will drain your stamina a lot, meaning that punishing him will be difficult while also maintaining enough stamina to dodge another combo that will head your way afterwards. For the most part, standing behind him offers protection from most of the swings from his greatsword in phase 1, but good luck getting behind him except on his final longsword swing. He blocks himself with his sword as well, meaning he's invulnerable for anything you throw at him during this. When phase 2 begins, the fight gets twice as difficult. He throws away his Fume longsword and exclusively uses his buffed Ultra Greatsword. With attacks similar to Soul of Cinder and Gwyn, he has relentless combos that are very difficult to dodge reliably and has what might be the highest DPS in the entire series. Despite how heavy he looks, he can jump around quite a bit and come at you with very quick charging attacks or the combos that I mentioned. He has one attack in particular where he slams his greatsword into the ground, unleashes an AoE and several orbs that hit as hard as anything else and can be very hard to avoid if you don't understand the patterns. Staying behind him isn't safe anymore either, as he can very quickly turn around and swipe at you with an attack that hits just as hard as any other. I'm not really too sure what to say without repeating myself, but all of Fume Knight's combos demand that you watch your stamina carefully and take advantage of any tiny window you might get while also considering his next attacks. He can also heal himself when he reaches around 10% HP unless you destroy the Ashen Idol surrounding the arena on the outside, and this heal can be brutally demoralizing for anybody new to the boss. This boss is undoubtedly the hardest in the game for me. It's basically 2 more Avas, but as I mentioned with Darklurker, a number going from 1 to 2 in a boss fight can make it incredibly difficult. Despite it being the hardest boss, I'm not too sure what to say since we covered most of this boss when we spoke about Ava. The fight starts off with Lud, a cat with an identical moveset to Ava, with Zolan sleeping on the side of the arena. Zolan doesn't wake up until Lud reaches around 40% HP, which is great, but once he wakes up, I honestly cannot explain how much harder this fight gets. Lud is hard enough to fight on his own, and introducing another cat that has access to the plethora of magic and insanely powerful melee attacks that Lud has makes this fight a near insurmountable challenge. Both of the cats have a disgusting amount of HP considering there's 2 of them, deal absurd amounts of damage, can stun you meaning you can't take advantage of their recovery times, can surround themselves in horrible AoE attacks that, as I said, are annoying to fight against alone, and having to avoid 2 of them? And if that wasn't enough, Zolan will actually buff himself at 30% HP. This will regenerate his health and he gains a damage boost. Is that really necessary? I don't think so. The fight with Zolan buffed can take longer than the fight with Lud involved as well. The AoE attacks I mentioned earlier can mean you literally can't get close to the cat, so you're just kind of left there watching his health bar go up. I hope I've justified this enough. The 2 cats of the Frigid Outskirt have remained the most difficult boss in this game since my very first playthrough, and I don't think that is ever going to change. And so we come to the end of the rankings. I'd like to thank all of you for watching until this point, even if you just skipped to the end bosses. I would love to hear your feedback on the video if you have any, as well as your opinions on these bosses in the comments section below. I love the Soulsborne series, and with Sekiro just around the corner, I cannot wait to see what glorious boss fights From will deliver to us in this latest release. Thanks again everybody for watching. I'd love to see you on my Twitch stream at some point. I've also ranked the bosses of Bloodborne, God of War 4, and the Prince of Persia trilogy, and I'll leave links to these in the video description for anybody interested. Thanks again everybody, it's been a long one. Peace.